Happy So What Day. I hope you're all having a fantastic morning or afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. We are in the middle of spring break, or in the beginning of spring break, really. So I have a special guest who does not have school right now. This is Emma joining us for a little bit this morning. Not only is it spring break, but today happens to be my birthday. Yay! Party noise. So I have a special gift for all of you watching today. You can use the code ELLEN10, ELLEN10, for $10 off of a $50 purchase at Sulky.com. So my gift to you on my birthday, or Sulky's gift to you, really, Ellen10. So be sure to write down that code and use it at checkout, because we've got some great things for you to grab up at Sulky.com, and I'm going to be talking about some of them during today's episode. So I am going to be showing you some tips and techniques for working through this dandelion quilt that is hanging behind me. It's a small quilt, more like a wall hanging really, and it features a really cool dandelion design. It's a little bit hard to see hanging behind me, so I'm going to be bringing up some pictures and going through the how-tos for how to create this quilt. And you can size it however you want. If you want a gigantic dandelion for a larger scale quilt, or if you want to make it even smaller and create an even more miniature version of what I have hanging in my sewing room, feel free to customize it to your liking. We've lost Emma, but that's okay. All right, so I'm going to start off. Let me first show you the finished quilt a little bit more up close. Now you can really see the quilting on it. I went with kind of a cloud design for the quilting, and I had my long armor friend do this for us. So really enjoy the 30 weight thread for this type of quilting. All the fabric is cotton, quilting cotton fabrics, and my long armor really just prefers working with the Sulky 30 weight cotton thread. So that's what we used here in a gray shade that matches the background fabric, and she just chose a little cloud formation, which I thought went with the dandelions really well. So let me go ahead and start by talking about the fabrics and thread combinations that I used for the appliques, and I already told you about the quilting thread. So for the appliques, I also went with a 30 weight cotton, and I chose a blendable variety. So Blendables, I know I'm always talking about them on the Facebook Live, but a blendable thread is really unique to the Sulky brand. You cannot find this type of thread anywhere else. It's randomly dyed across the thread length, so you don't get repeating patterns as you would in a more traditional or standardized variegated thread. The Blendables are dyed randomly, so every 2.5 to 5 inches, you will see a different color throughout. So obviously your colors are going to be the same or similar based on the thread color you choose, but you will not have a repeating pattern if you choose to use this for long arm quilting, or if you choose to use this for straight line or echo quilting. You won't get that same repeating color combination. So it's really cool, and I love, love, love using it for quilting as well as for appliques. And I'll show you the up close photos of our dandelion applique so that you can really get the idea. But for the appliques, you need the colors of the dandelion. So you'll need a white if you want to add white for your fluffy dandelion sort of pollen portion of the designs, but I used Sulky Filain thread. Filain is our 100% acrylic thread, and if you choose to brush it using a wire brush, it fluffs up and creates more texture and dimension. So I thought that would look really great on the little dandelion fluffs, and I could brush them out if I wanted to create even more dimension. If you do not use the Filain thread, you might want to create more appliques using that white fabric. You also need some different shades of green and yellow for the dandelion base. And I chose gray for my background fabric, but you could choose a print. A cloud print would be really pretty, or you can go with a different solid color based on your preferences. Now, the Dandelion Pattern. Oops, that looks really strange because it's completely out of context. Okay, the Dandelion Pattern. Now, I'm working on my Daylight Wafer light box here. I absolutely love this tool in my sewing room, and we carry a couple of different sizes of these light boxes at sulky.com. They are so great. They're wafer thin, hence the name. So they're easily stored in your sewing room. I mean, it is just slightly thicker than like a thick cutting mat. It is so cool. And you can adjust the level of light output based on your preference just by touching the little on-off button on the side of the light box. So you can adjust it for different varying levels of brightness. And once you have your level selected, the next time you go to turn on the light box, it will remember your level of brightness. So it's a pretty smart little tool, and I love using it. The Dandelion pattern that I used, I actually started with a free hand embroidery design that we have available through the links that I put in the description of today's post. You can go over to a landing page we created actually for QuiltCon this year. QuiltCon was all virtual this year for obvious reasons, and we participated as a vendor. So as part of that, we created a landing page full of dandelion inspiration. There are hand embroidery files. There are hand embroidery stitch guides if you need a little primer for some basic handwork stitches, or if you can't remember how to form a particular stitch that you want to use for handwork, this printable is really invaluable. You can print it out, laminate it, hang it in your sewing room, or keep it in your binder for future reference. And it just has some really basic stitches as well as a little bit more complicated ones with some illustrations that show you every part of the process for creating that stitch. You'll find that on the page as well. And then we have some links to some other dandelion inspiration. You might remember a while back, I created a zipper pouch that features a machine embroidered dandelion embellishment. Well, we now have a 6-pack of thread that goes with that machine embroidery design. So you'll have all the threads you need, including that really cool Filain thread I was just talking about, in a convenient 6-pack. And with purchase of the 6-pack, you also get the design file. So we kind of curated some different little kit options if you want to do a handwork dandelion or a machine embroidery dandelion, or if you want to create the quilt I'm talking about today, that is offered on our free project page at sulky.com. So I've linked to everything in the description of today's post, but I just wanted to kind of give you some background because at this point in the how-to, you will be working with that free hand-embroidered dandelion template and enlarging it. That is what I used to create my applique pieces for this quilt. So I enlarged it 200%, and I worked with only the base of the dandelion. I did not include that little stem piece. So I didn't have to enlarge that portion of the design. It has a rather large stem actually, so you can just disregard that portion and enlarge the main dandelion flower, if you will, however large you want it. So when I was talking about making a larger scale quilt or a smaller mini version of this quilt, or even if you wanted to make a set of placemats that feature this dandelion, maybe along the side edge, the same concepts that I'm going to be talking about today will apply to whatever size dandelion you choose to use. All right, so in the free project, if you download that, print it out, or just view it on your screen, however you like to view your patterns, you will get instructions for enlarging this part of the dandelion. So, like I said, if you want to make it a different size, that's completely up to you, and you will follow the same steps just with a larger or smaller dandelion. So here I am taking that hand embroidered design that's been enlarged and printed, and I'm using the light box to create different applique pieces for my dandelion design. So I'm tracing my printout and then marking the different areas that I have traced. I'm marking them with the fabric color that I need to use for that portion of the design. Whether it was a brown piece of fabric, light green, dark green, basically I assigned each portion of the applique to a different fabric color. Then I can use these pieces to form my larger applique. So hopefully that is making sense. If you have questions, put them in the comments and we will address them as they come in. I know it can be kind of confusing, but after I cut out all of my applique pieces, and you will want to use fusible web here, okay? Now, you can kind of get away with not using fusible web if you want to use the Sulky KK2000. Sometimes I have used this as an applique medium when I know I'm going to sew the applique right away. However, fusible web also gives you the benefit of having cleaner finished edges. When you're doing raw edge applique, you're going to get some amount of fray beyond your stitching line. And for this, I actually wanted some greater degree of fraying along my applique edges because I wanted a lot of texture to my dandelion. So I was not bothered by a greater degree of fraying, if you will. But if you want a little bit more containment, if you don't want a lot of frayed edges, then I highly suggest using fusible web for your applique pieces. So what you will do is you will fuse that fusible web to the wrong sides of your fabric before you cut them out, and then remove the paper backing, and then you will have you will be able to fuse your appliques in place, and that will give you more of a finished edge, and your fabric will kind of resist fraying because it's got that fusible attached to it. We have some great fusible web that is available at sulky.com, and I'm just going to double check so I'm not giving you the wrong information about sizes that are available, because I know some of you will ask what size we have for the fusibles. So bear with me just a moment while I double check. Okay, so it's called Soft Fuse Premium, and it's a really great fusible web to work with. It does not gum up your needle while you are sewing. It doesn't add a lot of weight to your appliques, so your quilt will still be nice and pliable over time. But like I said, it really gives you a more finished look to a raw edge applique. You're still going to get some degree of fraying, but that's kind of the charm and the look of raw edge applique. So we've got 3-yard rolls that are 18 inches wide. We also have 3-yard rolls that are 37 inches wide if you're working on something really large in scale. We also have 8 by 9 inch sheets. Those are sold 10 to a pack. So whether you're working on a small scale applique up to a really large 37 inch wide type of project, or if you just want to have extra on hand, you can go with that 37 inch wide. But there are options for the soft fuse. We highly recommend this fusible web. We've worked with it on a number of applications for our Simply Applique program as well. So that is available at sulky.com if you need some fusible web and want to grab that up along with your 30-weight Blendables thread. You can see the effect of the Blendables in my applique stitching here. I also have some other close-up images of it as well. Let me just make sure I am on the right image. Okay. Here are some other close-ups. So you can see the different colors that you get across your applique, and it really adds a cool effect to what you are creating. And then you don't have to switch your thread for every single color to match because you have these subtle variegations going across your entire applique, and it kind of brings that whole design together. So I really love the effect that those Blendables can give you. Here is another view so you can see the base of my dandelion is really taking shape, and I have my different colors of thread and different colors of fabric rather, and my blendable thread. Okay, so now I needed to create the brown kind of center of the dandelion where my bloom or my white sort of pollen area is going to shoot off of. So what I did was I just took my printout of the dandelion. So I printed out 2 basically. One I used for some of the applique pieces, then I traced off other pieces where there were overlap, and then another I used as sort of my key so I could reassemble the base of the dandelion and also get a feel for the shape of those brown sections so that I could draw a bunch of those right onto my brown fabric and cut them out for additional appliques. Now, if you're using fusible web, you need to attach your fusible web to the wrong side of your brown fabric, and you can draw on your fusible web side. I drew on the fabric side. It's completely up to you. Now, if you draw on the fabric side, your cutting needs to be really precise so that you don't see your drawing, or you'll want to use a heat removable marker like a friction pen or some kind of removable marker that you won't be able to see once you've done your appliques. Now, I like to use a heat removable marker because when I'm fusing, the marker will just disappear. If you're using like a water soluble or air soluble marker, be really careful and make sure to remove those markings before you do your fusing, because some of those markers will actually be permanent once you apply heat. So if you're unsure if that's going to happen with your marking method, do a little test along the selvage edge of your fabric or a little test piece of fabric to make sure that it's not going to be permanent once you fuse it or once you apply heat from an iron. So you can choose to add as many little brown sections of your dandelion as you like. I was kind of sparse with mine, and then I added some around. Those are the little fluffs that you would blow away off of your dandelion. So be sure to add some of those as well. Then you'll fuse those pieces down, or if you're using the KK, you can just secure them with your temporary spray adhesive, and you're good to move on to appliquing the brown parts and adding those white little fluffs. So here is one of my little secrets, I guess. I used Sulky Fabri-Solvy to make sure that my appliques were not going to move when I sewed them to the base fabric. Now, of course, you're using fusible web, right? So why are they going to move? Well, I find when you're working with really small applique pieces, and these ended up being very skinny, you can see behind me, there are skinny areas that when you are adding your stitching, your presser foot can actually kind of lift up the ends or cause the edges to kind of move or shift, even if you have fused this very well, simply because the pieces are so small and so narrow. So my sticky Fabri-Solvy is actually doing three things really. I'm using it to transfer the white fluff markings onto my base fabric. I'm using it as a stabilizer so that when I am appliquing those little brown pieces, they stay put and everything is nice and stable while I am doing my applique stitching. And it is securing those pieces even further. All the little points and ends and edges are nice and flat and contained. So what I did was I actually stuck pieces of sticky Fabri-Solvy over the entire applique. So I know, isn't this exciting? I know, I get excited about these silly things. So once I stuck the sticky Fabri-Solvy over all those little bits of brown that have been fused to my base fabric, then I began the process of drawing little star shapes to represent the fluff of the dandelion. I drew all over the right side of the sticky Fabri-Solvy. You can use your heat removable pen to do this. You can use a pencil. If you do use a pencil, you'll want to be very light with your markings because sticky Fabri-Solvy is water soluble. We're going to remove it with water. And if you use something that has a lot of ink or the ink isn't permanent, you can use a permanent marker for this as well. Like a pencil, you run the risk of your pencil markings actually being transferred to another portion of the design or part of your base fabric if the Fabri-Solvy kind of floats above the fabric and moves to a different part of the fabric before it is dissolved away. Your ink can actually transfer to another portion of the design or, like I said, your base fabric. So just be mindful of the type of marking pen or pencil or marker that you're using so that that doesn't happen to you. We don't want any ink to transfer somewhere else, and then we've got to worry about figuring out how to remove it. So once I transferred those markings, then I used that to follow along those lines and add the acrylic filaine thread to those portions. So I really just did straight stitches. Some of them I stitched over multiple times. You could set your machine for free motion stitching and follow all of those design lines, go back and forth and sideways and stitch as many white little pieces of fluff as you want. Now, I'm sure all of these parts of the dandelion have proper names that I am not using, so I apologize for all of you out there who know what all of these parts of the flower are called, because I'm sure you're cringing right now that I'm not using the right words for these portions of the design. So I apologize, but I'm just going to keep calling this the dandelion fluff. Okay, so you'll follow all of your lines, stitch all of your dandelion fluff, and I actually have these images out of order because prior to stitching your dandelion fluff, you will want to sew down all of those brown applique pieces. So since these are really narrow, You can, again, set your machine up for free motion, go back and forth. You can satin stitch over them or zigzag down all of those brown fabric pieces. I chose another blendable thread for the brown sections of the design, and it had brown and tan and gray and cream. And again, it just kind of unifies the whole look and gives another interesting color variation along your quilt top. So you can choose a brown thread that matches, or go with another blendable variety and have some fun with it. It would even look really cool in the Sulky Poly Sparkle. You could choose a sparkly brown thread and kind of really give a whole new dimension to that dandelion design. So whatever you choose to do, definitely sew down those brown applique pieces and then move forward with your Sulky Filaine thread. Now, when we are working with all these different thread weights, we've got to change the needle to accommodate the thread weight that we are using. So if you start with a 30 weight blendable, you'll want to be using a size 90-14 needle. For an applique, you can use a universal needle or a top stitch needle. But make sure it's size 90-14 when you're using those 30 weight blendables. Now, when we switch to the Sulky Filaine thread, Filaine is a 12 weight thread. It's much heavier than a 30 weight thread, so we need a larger needle. For this, I used a 116 universal needle. You have to go up in needle size so that the needle eye is large enough to accommodate the thickness of that thread. Now, when I'm using Filaine in the needle, I do not want to use Filaine in the bobbin. And actually for that 30 weight thread, I did not use 30 weight in the bobbin either. I actually used Sulky 60 weight bobbin thread for both the 30 weight applique thread and the 12 weight Filaine decorative thread. That smaller or lower weight bobbin thread allows you to get a nice balanced stitch and really secures those appliques well. So that would be my recommendation for this kind of combo quilting applique technique that I'm showing you here right now. If you're using the Poly Sparkle, like I mentioned, hey, why not swap in a Poly Sparkle? That's a 30 weight thread as well. So the 90-14 needle is what you want to use for that thread thickness. All right. So now you can see I've got all my appliques stitched down, and I have that Filaine thread that I used for the cool, sprigs of dandelion, the fluff, I'm calling it. And you can see my sticky Fabri-Solvy is nowhere to be seen. So what I did was I actually zigzag stitched the entire perimeter of my quilt top of that base fabric, and I threw this whole thing in my washing machine on the delicate cycle. So what happened was all of my sticky Fabri-Solvy washed away and rinsed away. And it was agitated a slight bit from my delicate cycle. Now, after this, I let it air dry and I pressed it from the wrong side. And you can see my raw edge applique really got a lot more raw edgy and frayed along those edges. I did not use fusible web for my portion of the dandelion base because I wanted that super raw edgy look. If you don't want as much raw edge look, you can use fusible web. Instead of doing a straight stitch, you could do a satin stitch along your applique edges and then all of those raw edges would be concealed and you wouldn't have nearly any fraying to deal with at all. Plus, you would have a really cool variegated look with the Blendables, and that would be even more prominent with your quilt design. So that look is entirely up to you. Maybe you don't like how raw edgy I liked it. Maybe you want to add even more white little fluffs to your design. That is completely up to you, and you can use your own personal preference to kind of guide your design decisions. All right, and then I'll show you the finished piece again. So once all of that is completed, you can choose to quilt this in so many different ways. You could do some straight line quilting, radiating away from your dandelion in kind of like a sunburst pattern, going across your entire quilt top. You can take it to a long armor, and don't forget to bring your Sulky thread when you go to your long armor. I always bring her a cone or two of Sulky thread to see what she likes in her machine, whether it's a 50 weight or a 30 weight, a blendable or a solid color, and she appreciates that so much, and over time has really discovered that she loves using Sulky 30 weight in her long arm machine. So I highly suggest, if you do use the services of a long armor, discuss the thread weight with them. See if you can bring them your favorite blendable thread for the project at hand. They may even give you a little bit of a discount on their services because you're providing the thread for them. So, you know, just have the conversation, and they might just really appreciate you bringing the thread for them to use for the project. So I went, like I said, with this cute little repeating cloud design. You might like something different for your project, or you could just free motion over the whole thing. You could add, like I said, even more white fluffy bits of dandelion across the entire quilt if you choose. You can add that dandelion stem if you like that look better. So this is really for you to personalize to your liking. You can grab the free project how-tos from sulky.com. Follow the link that I put in the description of today's post and really personalize this to your liking. Make smaller placemats with a smaller scale dandelion. You can grab up one of our dandelion 6-packs. So we have a machine embroidery palette, like I was talking to you about, that includes 5 spools of Sulky rayon, plus an additional spool of that Sulky filaine thread, and you can do machine embroidered dandelions. It looks different from this and definitely smaller in scale, but it's still a large scale embroidery design. I think it's a little bit larger than a 5x7 hoop, but you can also resize it down 20% so that it fits within your hoop parameters if you need to do that. I have a great post that I linked to in the description of that zippered pouch, so you can create lots of dandelion zipper pouches for friends to give away for Mother's Day or to make a quick project for Easter. There's still a little bit of time before the Easter bunny comes, and you can just put dandelions on everything and anything that you would like. We also have a dandelion hand embroidery kit, and with that you get 6 spools of 12 weight cotton petites, which is our preferred thread for handwork. So 1 strand of this thread equals 2 strands of traditional embroidery floss, but you get it on this great snap spool, so you don't have to deal with embroidery floss skeins and all the tangles and knots that they inevitably cause because you can pop your snap spool up, wind your thread end inside of it, and push it down, and now our thread end is completely contained so nicely. I mean, you can't beat it. Also, what I love about using the cotton petites for handwork is that you can then put this in your sewing machine and sew with it. You can do sashiko work, big stitch quilting. You can do applique with it like I just showed here with this project. All you need to do is make sure you have a large enough needle. So you can grab up the handwork kit, which includes that hand embroidery dandelion design, as well as a really cool dandelion cross stitch pattern. You will get both of those design files with purchase of that 6-pack, along with the 6 threads that you need to complete those designs. So you can grab up the handwork and then also grab up a pack of 100/16 universal needles, and then you can use this heavier weight 12 weight thread in your sewing machine as well. So double or triple duty, however you look at it. So the handwork dandelion palette or machine embroidery dandelion palette, or you can grab up some 30 weight Blendables and a spool of 12 weight filaine, and you can make this dandelion quilt that we talked about today. So there are tons of ways to add dandelions to the projects you create. And you might be asking, why the dandelion? What is the big idea behind this dandelion? Well, we at Sulky, we just thought the dandelion was a great symbol for 2021 because the dandelion really symbolizes joy and rebirth and refresh and renewal. And don't we all need a little bit of that these days, you know? Hopefully we're coming full circle and getting beyond this pandemic. And I really, really hope that we are close to being on the other side of it. And that dandelion just really symbolizes, you know, new things on the horizon and new things to come. So I hope you all enjoy adding dandelions to the things that you create. Be sure to go to that QuiltCon link that I put in the description of today's post. If you're not seeing it, click on that little see more button, and then you'll see everything that I linked to in the post today, so you can click around, shop those dandelion palettes, and check out the landing page that we made for QuiltCon. If you were unable to attend QuiltCon, this will give you a little inside scoop of what we create for shows like that and what you might, you know, be able to see from other vendors if you attend these virtual shows. You know, for those people who are not able to attend in-person shows anyway, just because of geographical location or income restraints, you know, these virtual offerings give you the opportunity to see, to see what you may have been missing, or maybe you're curious about these shows and what they offer and the different educational opportunities that they have beyond just a really great shopping market, you know. They set up these shopping booths where you can take part in really great show specials and just learn about new fabrics that are coming out, new products that people are inventing and manufacturing. And so even if you are joining from the comfort of your own home rather than in person, it's a great way to interact with those manufacturers, interact with those fabric companies, and just get a feel for the community that is created in these in-person shows. So check out our QuiltCon landing page and all the dandelion inspiration that we curated for you and for QuiltCon attendees. And let me know what you think, because we are always trying to please you and want to make sure that you are getting the great content and great products, and all of this is coming together to fuel your creativity. So enjoy all things dandelion. Enjoy your coupon code. It's good for today only. Ellen10, ELLEN10. So that is good for $10 off of a $50 purchase at sulky.com in honor of my birthday today. Yay! And I'm happy to be in your presence on my birthday today. I hope that you all had a great time. and I will see you on another So What. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday because we've got some great stuff to discuss and talk about. So I thank you for spending this time with me, and I'll see you next time.